If everybody would please rise. In remembrance of the 73rd anniversary of the December 7th, 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor, the men and women who died valiantly protecting our freedom, to those who survived to fight on, to all veterans and members of our armed forces that continue to this day to protect our nation, our right to freely gather and express our thoughts, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Scott, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing and join me in the attitude of prayer. Dear God, not everything that happens in your world reflects your goodness and grace. You have given us the freedom to choose, and with that freedom, sometimes we choose to do evil. Today we remember a time of great evil in our world. We remember World War II. We also remember those who stood their ground against great evil. Those who fought here at home and on the battlefield front to ensure that all evil would not prevail. We thank you that in the hour of need you gave men and women the strength and resolve to stand whatever the cost. May those brave souls who still remain here with us today feel today your hand of favor and strength. In their last years here on earth, give them renewed hope and awareness of our gratitude for their bravery and sacrifice. May we never forget them. May you honor them according to the grace you gave in those days and according to their response to that grace then and now. As we gather tonight, help us to remember our mission is to inspire the youth in our units, to help them find their own way and courage to stand up for what is right and true, and to find within their hearts and minds what it means to be a citizen of this great nation and of the broader world, In your name we pray. Amen. Please be seated. Okay. Historical question of the month. Now, this month, I've got a 1960 Cub Scout Magic Handbook. See if somebody can get the answer. Does anybody know who was the first Eagle Scout and what date did he receive his Eagle Scout on? I'm waiting. Google.
I do not.
I'll give it about another 60 seconds, if that.
I'm so kidding you.
Arthur Eldridge. You got it. What year?
You're super fast, Tom.
It was August 1912. August 21st of 1912. Funny story is, as I researched this, and I'm a scouting history buff, and I think it's real important to understand where we came from. There's a lot of really neat things that all came together at once to form the Boy Scouts of America. When Arthur Eldridge earned the Eagle Award, didn't have a local board review. He was actually reviewed by the bits and pieces of the people who actually formed Scouting. Dan Beard, James West, Longfellow, and by some accounts, even Seton himself. The word that he chose was grill him to see if he'd actually gone through everything. He earned it and received a letter from West on August 21st, informing him of that. But he didn't actually get his Eagle badge until Labor Day, the following Labor Day, because the dies for the badge hadn't been made yet. So take the time and learn a little bit about Scouting history. It's kind of fun. It's good to know where we came from. All right. Agenda and then the feedback form. Everybody, just a reminder, please fill these out, the good, the bad, what you'd like to see in the future. This helps me be able to provide better and get the things that you would like to have. So I don't know where Kari went.
I'm still playing with toys.
Is he really? Great.
That's one thing I guess we'll have time to do is,
Yes.
I guess I would like to see some discussion about the change of Cub Scouts.
We actually have that on with Scott Darbo, my counterpart. He's at his daughter's school program right now. He might be here a little later. We actually sat down here this last month and we put together a calendar. We stopped in August of 15. We have enough to finish it, but we were trying to get at least 6 months out and trying to find where does that best fit in. And so everybody's aware, next month we're doing what we call the fireside chat. And that's an opportunity. We're going to have representatives from district council, training chairs. We're going to have, all these people here for you to have an opportunity to give feedback to talk about, what you like, what you don't like, ask those questions. And then that is actually on the agenda, and I can't even talk about it yet because all the stuff's not even out yet.
Yeah.
So that is on the plan. That's already on the schedule. So, and that's a very good question, very good point, because there are some pretty good changes coming on. Anything else while we're waiting for Kari again?
She would still love to have a user surpass that were to participate in public protests before those still be at the We would love to have some users for that.
Anybody feels the urge? Be a good reason, good publicity for our scouts. Okay. With that, I have a whole bunch of handouts. Oh, it's all good stuff though. Last month we talked about Webelos to Scout transition. Yeah. Webelos to Scout transition. And we talked about, whose responsibilities the different contacts were, setting up schedules, when do you start to do these things? And there was a lot of discussion, a lot of questions. Last month was kind of a survey, a little bit, and what we did is I went through and looked through about half a dozen different resources, and the best one was actually on scouting.org, and it's this plan. And if you turn to your first page, I don't want to read this word for word and insult your intelligence, but I do want to hit on a couple of things. The first thing that I really found was interesting is Webelos to Scout transition. If you look at their timetable, you notice there's 12 months on this timetable. It starts in December and wraps up about middle of February. It goes all year round. So this transition process, it's an ongoing collaboration between the packs and the troops. And just becoming familiar, I think that a lot of units, their focus is so hard on what their advancement programs are, what their outdoor activities are. Troops, I think sometimes forget that, especially those boys, they're busy doing their thing. They forget that they're role models, and every time they walk by a kid in a blue uniform, that kid's just watching every movement they make and wanting to be one of the older boys, wanting to be a Boy Scout. And so, even when they're not recruiting or making that impression, they're making that impression and they're recruiting, for good or for bad. So, like I said, take the time and read through this. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the different positions and the responsibilities they have. Right now, if you turn to page 76, which is page 2, I guess, talks about the District Webelos Transition Chair, which right now is vacant in our district. It talks about the different things that they do. And they serve basically as a liaison between the packs, the troops, and they're making sure they're kind of prompting, kind of prodding to get the people in contact with each other that need to be in contact with each other. asking the questions. Have you done this? Have you done that? Asking the scoutmasters. Has your troop been in contact with these boys? Gives them some ideas on what to look for when they visit troops. Gives troops ideas as to what to do when Webelos come to visit. They also do some reporting to the council and to the district as far as how many Webelos are going to cross over, how many scout troops have they visited, who's been in contact with who, just some accountability type things. I know we've had people in this position in the past, but right now it's vacant, and if somebody feels like taking on a challenge, I'm sure that we would love to have you in that capacity. So, next one, some of the questions we'd had is whose responsibility is it to contact? I'm not going to go through this page per page, I promise, because we don't have time for that. But whose responsibility is it to contact the packs? And we had answers both ways last month. It's the pack's responsibility to contact the troop. It's the troop's responsibility to contact the pack. It's kind of both. But that goes back to that 12-month calendar, that constant planning that is going on, that constant communication all year round. There's different activities, there's different ways, but there's always some communication that should be taking place between troops and packs. Den chiefs was a thing that came up last month. How many of our packs here have den chiefs? Kinda. Have them, but they don't participate. Sometimes that's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. What type of influence do you see from these guys when they're there?
Oh, they interact with kids good. The Cub Scouts good and stuff, and they always, how kids are out that age, they always kind of tend to. It's just the adult talking, but when it's an older scout or somebody that they think, oh, he don't say thank you, we'll listen to them and stuff.
Last time our pack had a den chief was pulled up on Helen Kramer with.
His name wasn't Matt, was it?
That was.
It was my son, Matt Sykes.
Yeah, and that's the last time we've had.
Yeah, and that was for my son, very rewarding experience for him. He would come home and talk about. I would almost get the play-by-play. It's like you've been telling me about this for 2 hours. The meeting was 30 minutes. How'd that work? So that's good, though. He was excited. He learned a lot from that experience. But I will tell you, I think every boy in that den transferred to our troop. And it wasn't because I did some great job recruiting. It's because my Boy Scout made a difference in those Cub Scouts world, and they wanted to be where he was. And those of you who know Matt, he's kind of goofy, and he likes to laugh a little too much probably, but he had a very positive experience. The kids had a very positive experience, and my son learned a lot from that. So, overnight activities. I know, we have some different organized Cub Scout, Boy Scout overnighters, but how many of your units actually invite Cub Scouts to go with? This open invitation to Camp House, but not the long-term high-end Camp House, but the shorter weekend Camp House. So you guys have a program where you're in constant contact with them? Do that? Yeah. That can be a powerful tool. Not even if they don't always go, or maybe if it's something close by, the Cub Scouts can come out for a day. That's a good influence. But just the fact that you're in contact with them and you're inviting them to go be a part of your troop, even if they don't get to participate, they remember that. Especially if it's a heartfelt, we really want you to be there.
That was part of the idea of the multi-pack about in the spring. Being associated with certain groups and stuff like that, see what the groups are doing. So it's important, even though it is multi-pack camp out, it's important, you know, to get invited, try to make those too, because that's kind of part of their routine for the food.
How many times have you had Cub Scouts or Relo Scouts attend your troop outdoor activities that ended up not being a very positive recruiting tool? That happens to me once. And I had some boys that I felt were pretty prepared, and it didn't go anything like what I wanted. And I had some unimpressed parents, and you know that those things happen too. So when you're planning those kinds of activities, it's very important. You know, have the boys prepared, the whole be prepared thing, and you need to know what's going to happen while they're there. So that's the trick about that. It's the troop's responsibility, according to scouting.org, to arrange for Rebelo dads to visit troop meetings. It should be planned several weeks in advance. So, as far as Boy Scout leaders, how many of you actually actively seek out the dads and invite them to come? You don't sit back and wait for the call that, hey, we want to visit your troop. I mean, how many of you actually are out there being proactive and inviting and saying you need to come to a meeting? This would be a good meeting to come to type of activity.
As far as we've looked in, we've had pretty good access to the scouts. You know, saying, hey, we got this going on, come out and maybe spend a day or something. So it's good.
This is very important. One of the responsibilities, and we're talking about troop responsibilities and Webelos to scout transition. One of the troops' responsibilities is the scoutmaster's responsibility to make himself accessible, to perform a scoutmaster conference with the Webelo Scout so that they can earn their Arrow of Life. And that's something that is definitely the troop's responsibility. It's a good time to do that too when the kids are visiting, or if you're visiting their den meeting. And then, and like I said, I don't want to hit every one of these. I printed it off so you can take it home and read it. But one of the other key things is to plan a good crossover ceremony. Work with the Cub Master so that it fits with their blue and gold or whatever activity function that they're having this at. But it's amazing what a good crossover ceremony, that impact, that memory that can leave with a younger Wolf Scout. You'll sit there and watch that happen. And sometimes that crossover ceremony, up until those kids get to be Webelos, first year Webelos in that area, that's the only exposure they get to Boy Scouts is at that crossover ceremony. So, NOA. Yep. There's definitely a good opportunity for the Order of the Arrow to participate with crossover ceremonies. If you really want to impress a lot of people, have an OA crossover ceremony with the full regalia. That leaves a lasting memory.
We did it last year. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Very good. One more I wanted to hit on. We talked about a little bit last month, but it's really important if you want to the boys to feel, the scouts to feel like your troop is organized. If you want the boys to know what's going on so they know when they would like to come visit, and if you want to actually be able to provide them with a long-term plan, have your annual calendar of events. It doesn't have to be the play-by-play, but it could be the one-page, 12-month, here's the basic 14 activities we're doing on a page that you can hand to them so they can get excited about being in your unit when they come visit because they want to go do those things. All right, pack activity. Or pack. What, I skip one? No, I know. I thought I had to pack that. Maybe I did two pages back. Unit commissioner responsibilities. Everybody know heard of the term feeder pack? What's a feeder pack?
After you expect to get to school.
Why is that? Okay, let's look at First United Methodist Church. First United Methodist Church actually charters 3 scouting organizations. Pack 28, Troop 136, and Crew 73. Not to call it a food chain, but it's just a progression. And as a scoutmaster, Sean, of 136, do you just assume that all the 28ers are coming right up to 136?
Not necessarily.
Why? They have a choice. It's true. But does that may change your recruiting tactics with them?
You could be a little less proactive about just because you've got to receive that.
Mm-hmm. I can see why. There's an assumption there. Now, smaller communities where there's a pack, a troop, probably not a crew, you're probably going to get them. But what ends up happening is the kids, okay, and this is one of the reasons I think that some of these changes are happening inside of the Cub Scout program. But by the time they get through first year Webelos and they're working on second year Webelos, they're getting kind of bored. Mm-hmm. Done a lot of the same things over again. And they're thinking, oh, more scouts. You got to wow them. You got to make them want to be part of it. I think that's why it's so important to involve your second year Webelos with your troop as much as you can, to get them excited about being a Boy Scout. Let them see that there's more beyond that. That's why the calendar is important. But the unit commissioner's responsibilities is he's kind of that fire starter. He's the one that can create that bond and kind of get the communications rolling between the packs and the troops and crew if you want to look at continued transition. He can help plan. He can help communicate, make contacts between the different unit leaders. He can help make sure that paperwork is being taken care of. I mean, there's just a lot of things that the unit commissioner can do. How many of you know who your unit commissioner is? How many of your unit commissioners go to your unit meetings? You know, that's a good point right now. We are missing some. But we have people that are trying to fill. I know Val's been trying really hard to help fill in where he can. And
I know our pack has had like 6 years since I've been part of it, so. But
who was your last unit commissioner, remember?
I've never had him since we've been part of the pack. I don't know if you guys remember one any further back here, like a couple of years ago. So, anyway, that's kind of point too, is it happens.
I don't want to put anybody on the spot. Ken, you're unit commissioner. What do you see? What do you feel your role is in that Webelos to Scout transition? Where do you see yourself fitting in?
Decided to encouragement, we would like to see an adult play part of the Webelos Scout transition. That's the goal, but we have as many of them as we have commissioners.
Right.
We can have 3.
Yeah. I didn't realize you had one. No wonder you kind of give me a little deer in the headlight look. Okay. Well, if you don't know who your unit commissioner is, or if you don't have one, I would encourage you to call the district commissioner, Val. He would typically be here, but he also has a grandchild with the school program, so a lot of school programs are not.
The units might be the best resource for recruiting commissioners because of the scout master. Adults go out, they still have a feel for the scout program. They may act as a commission.
Right.
So the unit might have more luck getting their own commission.
We would appreciate it if you could give us help with find commissioners too. It's pretty rewarding. I've enjoyed this portion or this side of being a roundtable commissioner. At any rate, pack responsibilities. Again, you're talking about communication. Whose responsibility is it to do what? Not only does the troop have a responsibility to be working with and contacting the pack has a responsibility to be reaching out and communicating with the troops, preparing calendars, helping arrange the things that they need for unit advance or for rank advancements. While the troops are inviting the Webelos to come up for visits, the Webelos, and should start younger than that, Dens, Bears, first year, Wolves, whatever, they should be reaching out to troops and inviting them to come to things too. So that there's just that, like I said, it's a shame, but probably even a lot of Bear Scouts, their only exposure to a Boy Scout is a crossover ceremony. And I think that if you look at the percentage of boys that are dropping out because they feel they're getting bored and they don't know what's coming up, what a better way to eliminate that problem than to start interacting more, especially at a younger age. To help plan meaningful ceremonies and crossovers. And the crossovers, typically in our area, the troop plans the crossover. That's their responsibility, but they still should be working with the Cubmaster. You don't want to have two similar ceremonies for Arrow Blight and then a crossover because there are some ceremonies that are very much alike. And then if your troop doesn't exist in your community, which we have some people from outside of Kearney that they didn't have a troop, they reached out to a unit that was close by that they could travel to, or there's another option. I'm not real familiar with it, but the Lone Scout program. So, at any rate, or start your own unit. Or start your own unit, because that's very rewarding and not busy at work at all. There's a Webelos to Scout tracking form. And then there's some sample transition ceremonies. I do have one more handout on this, and I think that you got it. You have one. Scott hands these out. What drew my eye, this is actually comes from a letter that is handed out or emailed out to leaders as far as helping plan different aspects and opinion. It's the Advancement News, October 2014 Advancement News. And this is a email that you can sign up to get from Scouts, from the BSA. And the first sentence really, really hits it. A boy's transition from a Cub Scout pack to a Boy Scout troop should begin the day he first puts on his blue uniform and continue to the day he crosses over the bridge into a Scout troop. So, as we look at our Webelos to Scout transition numbers declining, at a national level, what was it, 30%?
We got no problem.
Was that the number we talked about? I don't know, but that's awful. But the drop off was horrendous. And Kearney, I think we're a little bit above that. I don't think we're too far from the national average council-wide though. So very important. I know that there was a lot of questions, a lot of different varying opinions, and so I went straight to scouting. As I read through this, it answered about everything that we were talking about last month. So, any comments, questions before we go on?
That thing that Josh just handed out to you, it's available if you'd like to get a copy of. I'm going to just pass around and print out 2 copies. This is the whole advancement newsletter. And if you'd like to be subscribed to that, anyone can. You just need to send an email to that email address with your username and your email address, and then they will automatically send you out the newsletters every month. So I'll pass around the last 2 months if you want to take a look at it. So I've got a lot of good information.
as far as commitments go, what numbers are at as they come in? No. It just is what it is. And I know
We don't really talk numbers, I guess.
we used to, the first couple years as Scoutmaster, our troop was so small that, we had 3 boys, but our numbers, percentage-wise, went up significantly. So, I did some really hard recruiting, and the first year we got, I think, 3 boys, and then the second year we got 16. And then you have a whole other series of things you have to deal with. So, and we dealt with them as best we knew how. But at any rate, we always would keep the kids posted. This is how many we've got committed. The kids would get excited about it. And then as the next set of Weeblos that come to visit, it's like the boys were challenged to one up the last set of visits. And it was kind of fun. At any rate. Eric?
Is that enough video that you ready?
What's that? Video's ready.
Well, I mean, I'm not.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how many they need.
Well, they need one for everyone, everything. So, well, you just want to give them one for now, but yes, do that.
It sounds easier. While Eric's setting that up, we talked last month about Friends of Scouting and Friends of Scouting ceremonies and Friends of Scouting tactics, and how sometimes Friends of Scouting wasn't always necessarily viewed as a positive thing inside of our meetings, and so on. In fact, I think Friends of Scouting got lumped with root canal last month. Lumped in the same basket as root canal last month. Friends of Scouting. And and it's kind of unfortunate, but it's, as Dana put it, necessary evil. And it shouldn't be viewed as an evil. That's too bad. But it has a very, very important reason for being. And we talked about different ways to make that. Is that going to work? Okay. We talked about different ways to make that less painful for us. One of the things, that planning ahead, like anything, if you can create a good plan and work your plan, you'll be more successful. Some of the things we talked about last month, that as we look through everything and tried to figure out the best way to present this in ways that we hadn't already discussed, was you guys hopefully have a 2015 calendar ready for your unit already. You already know when Blue Gold banquets will be. You already know when Courts of Honor will be. Time to start campaigning for Friends of Scouting starts in January. And that starts with setting up when your Friends of Scouting campaign is going to be, when your Friends of Scouting presentation is going to be. That gives Eric and his team of volunteers the opportunity to get the people put together that need to do the training and get them trained and give you the best tools that you can have to be successful in them. Eric and the district have already done all our packets together with our goals. Eric, how are goals determined?
The volunteers that put it together this year just, basically, if I remember right, they based it on June 30th numbers, so that should be, fairly safe number. And I think they said bronze was $25 a scout, silver was $35, and gold was $45. And in that, did you pass out that recognition list?
Yes.
Okay. To receive the recognition.
You did a great one, teacher. Right. So we talked about different tactics in campaigning. One of them was to start campaigning before the Blue and Gold banquet, so that at the Blue and Gold banquet or a court of honor, there was just kind of a finish up finale type of thing. It wasn't really consuming a lot of the ceremonies and the events time, because one of the things that people kind of frown on a little bit is the fact that we've got this advancement, really nice ceremony put together for a Blue and Gold, and then somewhere in the middle of that we have a presentation that's just kind of not part of anything. They just come, they ask for money, and they go. And it's an obvious giant fundraising campaign. It doesn't fit. And so instead of taking all that time at that event, the idea was to start preparing ahead of time, to start sending information home with your scouts to the parents, making sure that when they come to Blue and Gold, they're inviting grandpa and grandma and aunts and uncles, and they're expressing you need to get your checkbook. They're trying to get everything ready so when you're there at the Blue and Gold banquet, it's done. The next thing we talked about, I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time on it because I don't have time for hot topics if we have. Another thing we talked about was the actual presentation. How some presentations go a lot into, I'm not trying not to pick on Eric because he does so many of them, but a lot of the presentations go so far into details. Well, this much money goes here, this much money goes there, and just you see people glaze over because it's just the information they don't care about. And then we talk about different presentations that zero, nobody knows exactly where the money goes to from the presentation. But it talks about what does it do for the scout? How is my dollars that I give going to benefit a scout? And how those can be the most effective. I watched a lot of different Friends of Scouting campaign videos and presentations, and I really think, I hope you guys can hear this. Is there going to be speakers on? This is probably one of the best Friends of Scouting. Are you sure it's going to have sound there?
I'm here to ask for money tonight, but I think. Hey everybody, thanks for coming tonight. My name is Tom Riss, I'm a volunteer with the Friends of Scouting program. And yes, because it's Friends of Scouting, I'm here to ask for money tonight. But I think more importantly than that, I want to spend most of my time talking about, for me as a parent, as a father of 2 boys and 3 children in total, what scouting really means to me. So I'm going to start by talking to you about 3 things that I think for me are direct message about what comes out of scouting. And those 3 things are scrambled eggs, dirty dishes, and dirty jobs. I'm going to take you on a quick trip into my kitchen one morning very early. I get up very early for work, about 5 o'clock in the morning, because I like to work out before work. But I was up one morning early finishing my workout, and I heard some noise in the kitchen, and I walked around the corner, and there was my 13-year-old son cooking his breakfast on the stove, and it was shocking to me because I'd never seen that before. And I said to him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Cooking breakfast. I like scrambled eggs." Completely dumbfounded, I said, "Well, when did you learn to cook?" And without even batting an eye or looking my way, he said, "On the last campfire." And I'd ask all of you as parents a question: how many of your son's non-scout friends cook their own breakfast? Because I know mine do, because it was a skill that they learned on the scouts. And I don't think it's about scrambled eggs or pancakes or waffles or donuts. I think it's about something more important than that. I think it's about self-sufficiency. And there's my son when he was much younger, learning to cook on one of his first campouts with Troop 20 in Wilton, Connecticut. Now I'm going to take you to another conversation I often have with my 12-year-old son. I'm sure many of you have this with your sons, and it starts with this: clean your room. And I will tell you that my 12-year-old's room is pretty darn clean. In fact, it's cleaner than my wife and I's bedroom. So I would ask again a simple question: how many of your son's non-scout friends clean their room, or wash their clothes, or wash their own dishes without being asked? And I think what scouting imparts upon you, and I would define this one as a sense of responsibility and a sense of commitment to yourself and commitment to others. And I'll take you to another camp out. There's my little guy when he was much younger. That was in fact his first camp out in Boy Scouts when he was testing out the troop. And they asked, hey, who's going to help out with KP and clean up for breakfast? And he was the first to raise his hand. And I will tell you, he never raised his hand at home, but he raises his hand all the time now, post this, and post his entrance to the Boy Scout program. Your sons are scouts, and statistically, they're very much more likely than their non-scout friends to graduate from college. They're much more likely than their non-scout friends to earn higher incomes. They're much more likely than their non-scout friends to place a high value in family relationships. And I can tell you, when I look back at my family, the things I cherish the most are the relationships with my wife and my children, and the memories that doing things together create. Scouting instills a sense of appreciation for that in our sons. Now, I'm not famous, but this guy is. Many of you might know him. His name is Mike Rowe. He's the host of one of the most popular shows on television called Dirty Jobs. But what you may not know about is Mike Rowe's past. And before Mike wound up on Discovery Channel's Dirty Jobs, he was an opera singer. And after that, he actually sold stuff on QVC for a little while. And long before that, he was an Eagle Scout. There's a great letter if you go on Google and just Google Mike Rowe plus Eagle Scout letter. And there was a dad that reached out to Mike and said, hey, my son is almost making Eagle, but he's kind of lost the will to go on. He's lost interest in the program, and I don't think he's going to make it. And Mike, I know you're an Eagle Scout. Would you reach out to him and just give him a little oomph to get him over that goal line? And Mike wrote this child a great letter, and I'm going to do it a bit of disservice because I'm going to paraphrase it. But I'm going to take some of the most important messages that I think were in that letter. So the first thing Mike said to this boy was, the Eagle Award is not really meant for people who need to be dragged across the finish line. Being an Eagle Scout requires you to be different than most everyone around you, but from Mike's perspective, being different is really, really hard. That's why the award is called an accomplishment. However, when he looks back at his very accomplished career in life and now being arguably a household name, what Mike Rowe's values in his case was doing the things that were different, doing the things that put him on the edge of popularity, things like singing opera or working in Home Shopping Network, and most importantly, earning his Eagle Award when all those choices required hard work, sacrifice, and delayed gratification. So Mike goes on to say to this boy, I have no idea if you prefer an easy life of predictability or mediocrity, or if you have the passion to follow the road less traveled. Only you get to decide that. And I think that's what Scouts is about. Scouts is about giving each and every child the opportunity to be extraordinary in the goals that they choose to try to accomplish. Every one of our sons can work hard at school and never become Einstein. Every one of our sons can practice their sport and not become Derek Jeter. Every one of our sons can practice their instrument and not become Beethoven. But in Scouts, and this will be at a different level for each child, every Scout will become more self-sufficient. Every Scout will learn what it means to do for others. Every Scout will obtain skills that will last a lifetime. Every Scout will capture a character to be proud of. And every Scout will accomplish something extraordinary for them, something that they never thought they could do, whether it was earning that rank, earning that merit badge, climbing that mountain, kayaking down that river. Each one of those are a goal that many of those boys never have the chance to either do, much less accomplish. And for them, it's an opportunity to be extraordinary. But Scout programs don't happen on their own. Our council needs your help. It takes a lot of money to run the Boy Scout program here in Connecticut. The Connecticut Yankee Council responsibly raises and spends over $4 million per year. 85% of it goes directly in service to individual Scout units like this one. So I'm asking tonight for a $180 donation. And I know that seems like a lot of money, and in fact, it is a lot of money. So I looked at, what are you likely to spend $180 on this year? Well, in Connecticut, you'll spend it on 6 months of Cablevision. If you have internet access along with your Cablevision, which you probably do, you'll spend it on 3 months of cable and internet. If you go to Dunkin' Donuts every day, you'll spend way more than that. But if you bought just 5 extra large Dunkin' Donuts coffees each month, you spend $180. And you get less coffee if you went to Starbucks instead of Dunkin' Donuts. I'm sure you all have iPhones or smartphones, and you've got data plans, so you can download things like Angry Birds and play cool games on your phones. Well, $180 will buy you 6 months of an iPhone data plan, the cheap one, the lowest amount of data. If you donate $180 tonight here with us, you'll spend that money not on any of those things, but on changing a boy's life for the better forever. Because the skills, the self-sufficiency, the responsibility, the character that comes from Boy Scouts lasts a lifetime. And it will always be with your children. And your investment of $180 in the programs today will last with these boys as it has with me for the rest of their lives. Scouts truly gives every boy the opportunity to decide to be extraordinary, to accomplish something they never thought they would do, and understand what it means to work for something. Understand what it means ultimately to achieve. So give all the boys across the state of Florida the opportunity to achieve by making a donation tonight. Thank you very much.
That's a rough. Yeah, it's really bright. One of the things that I really liked about this presentation was it wasn't excessively long. He really didn't go into any reading of the form to fill out. And when it did come time to ask for money, he was very specific about what he asked for. And I always found that to be more productive than a vague, please donate. By donating $180, this is what you're helping pay for. There was a number that he said help people be productive. Not everybody can do that, but they would understand that. So, what did you think of that presentation? Would that be something more welcoming at a blue and gold or at a
Much more.
less facts, I suppose, but more of a story? And so,
People relate to that better.
yeah, I think
They don't need to know the district, the chair, what. I totally see the players on their faces.
yeah, it happens. And you're in front of the room, and that has to be discouraging.
Yeah.
When you're trying so hard and you see the faces, more people start looking at their cell phones. It's like you're trying. And so, I don't know who will do your Friends of Scouting presentations in your units this year, but I can tell you there's some training coming up on that. Eric, can you tell us about that?
Yes, January 31st is a part of our annual planning meeting. It's going to be around lunchtime. We're inviting units to come in out to UNK. We're going to provide lunch, and we're going to actually do kind of a training, probably less than an hour, to just go through the materials and then just generally talk about presentations. We're going to have a volunteer or two there that has done presentations, just very similar to this. We're going to talk to you about their presentations. Ultimately, as you can see there, that's a volunteer, and it's so much better when you have a volunteer stand up and talk to a volunteer, especially if it's a volunteer you get. In Scott's troop, Patty Bennett had done a fantastic job putting on a very good presentation. They brought in some Eagle Scouts. They had a former Scout leader come in and just really gave a dynamic presentation. And again, just like what you saw in this presentation, they didn't spend a lot of time talking about facts. They talked about stuff that tugs your heartstring. It's really important for the committee, for most of you that are youth-facing leaders, to understand the behind-the-scenes things. What does it support and why is it important? But for your average parent, this is probably a better presentation for them to hear. And this can only come from a parent in your unit. It really can. Any number of volunteers can come in and talk, but again, they're really better when it's coming up. If Tanya were to stand up there and say, "Hey, my son has been involved in scouting for X number of years, and here's how it's benefited him," parents relate to that so much better. So anyway, that's January 31st. That'll be UNK. Noonish, somewhere around there, and we'll broadcast it out for those who cannot be there in person, but we'll provide free lunch and hand out some materials. So can't have it go wrong. Free food. So. Free food. Yeah.
But I think
one thing maybe to think outside of the box a little bit, think about all of the big fundraising drives that professional organizations do. They usually have some kind of seed or initial offering that says, well, look, we've got this person that's already given this amount. Or you might say, well, we've got somebody to come in and they will match dollar for dollar. Well, I think every unit probably knows that there's probably 4 or 5 people that give a sizable amount. We'll get them together and say, okay, these people, they already know they're going to give a certain amount. We'll just present it as a match challenge. If you give this much, they'll give this much and match it. And that might be enough incentive to say, okay, I might have given 5, but now I'll give 10 because I know my 10 means 20. Might be a way to bump that up even more. And I think there's got to be lots of other ideas, and I would be surprised if there weren't some ideas just floating out in this room.
You know, and one other good thing that when Scott's troop did the presentation is the presenter right then and there gave their gift. They turned the gift over and said, you know, here's my support. They didn't say what they gave, but they said, here's my gift. And they kicked it off. I think that's so important. I've been involved in many fundraising campaigns for many different organizations. And I go into it knowing that I'm expected to give. I'm going to be a part of it. I'm expected to give. I would feel horrible standing in front of the volunteers, or, you know, I most recently helped raise money for my high school alumni association, and I would have felt awful asking people to give and not giving myself. So I think it's really important that whoever it is that's going to present, you know, make their gift and make it public so everybody knows that they're giving. You know, it's hard to stand in front of people and say give and then not give yourself.
Does that, I mean, there's a lot of discussion about this last month. Did that help? Is there any more questions, more information we can provide on this? We want this to be a very successful program. It needs to be a successful program for our district here in council.
I was going to just one more thing, Josh. One of the things we're going to do at the presentation, and we'll probably have just a little blurb at next month's roundtable about it. Somebody brought up, and I forget who it was, you know, one of the questions Josh asked was, what does Friends of Scouting support? And somebody said training, and then they backtracked and said, no, wait, training is done by the volunteers, so there's no cost there. And so one of the things that we're going to present is specifically, since training was brought up, we're going to talk about, you know, what costs are associated with training, because there's a lot of costs, even if the volunteers present, there's a lot of costs associated with putting on training, getting the people lined up, materials, all kinds of stuff. So we're going to actually go through and talk about it. We have free lunch, talk about what does it cost to put on certain things. Because again, you're not going to share that probably with your parents unless they really want that information, but it is really important for them, for people presenting and you as youth-facing leaders to understand what is the money support, where does it go, and why is it important. So we'll definitely talk more in depth on that. And I'm happy to sit down with anyone personally one-on-one and talk about it at any time. So,
Is there ever any fundraising for Friends of Scouting outside of the actual Kids Impact?
Yes, absolutely. We go into the communities, and just like we do with families, we go into communities and do campaigns. I'll be honest, probably in the last 3 or 4 years, we've done a very bad job. We haven't had volunteers in place to do it, so it's been me. And I think that, you know, in the next couple of years, we're going to move things in a direction to improve that. Some other things that we've done, well, like for example, most recently you're requiring to give where you live, Forge to Give and Grow, and Lexington to Give Big Lexington. That helps to offset some of the costs. We do some dining nights, some grants. We write some grants sometimes to help offset some of those costs. So there's a lot of things that we try to do to not just rely on families. I can tell you when I started, and probably up until about 3 or 4 years ago, our family, we had the biggest family campaign in the entire council. We probably raised $30,000 just from our families alone. And so, the family portion has always been a good portion of it. In the last couple of years, it hasn't been so much. So, I'll blame myself for part of that, because you know what, if you hear from me every time, I'm not always the right person standing for present. So yes, the short answer to your question is yeah, we definitely do. And sometimes it's not just that. It's like, if you look in your program guides, you've seen all these ads in here. We get sponsors to sponsor some things. I mean, anything can be sponsored, like our jerseys, our hockey jerseys for Scouting and Storm. We have Prime CrossFit is sponsoring all those jerseys. That helps. Instead of us spending $2,000 on the jerseys, they're giving us $2,000 to offset their costs so that we can put more money into the program. So there's lots of opportunities there. The other thing too is gift in kind. So like if, for example, you work for somebody that says, hey, I'll give you 10 cases of paper. That stuff we can use to help offset costs of the program. So it's not just necessarily cash that we're looking for, it's sometimes material. So.
And free rental hours on a skid steer.
There you go.
That adds up fast. Okay, good question. Any other questions?
So is there a list of items or things
Are needed?
that are needed?
Absolutely, there is, and I will make a note here to make sure to get that out. It's been a while since we presented that.
That we can share with.
Yeah.
Yeah, one last year.
Do we have one last year? Okay, I can remember.
It's been a year though.
Yeah. So
It's been a year.
yeah,
Since the
absolutely.
last campaign.
And sometimes it's maybe even if we don't, somebody might think of something that that we could use that maybe we never thought about before. But I think we can accept just about anything. But one time somebody wanted to donate, or they donated like 10,000 rolls of toilet paper. Well, that's a lot of toilet paper. We can utilize that, and we'll give them the credit for it. But it's things like that are great. But or I think at other times somebody gave us like hot pink paper, like really bright hot pink paper, and it wasn't. So, and sometimes sometimes it thinks, one time we had somebody actually donated a used car to us. Well, really, it would have taken more work, more money than what it was worth to invest in it. So we just turned around and sold the car, and then we used the capital from that. So, which if you have a car or a boat or something you want to donate, we can turn that into capital. So there's a lot of opportunities to donate. If you know somebody that farms, they have the gifts of grain where you can they can donate 10 bushels of corn, and whatever the market price is for that, that's the credit they get, and we get the cash for it. So there's lots of opportunities. So I will definitely make sure I get that list out.
Make some kind of a list.
Yeah.
Get it out.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on Friends of Scouting?
I think more people would be willing to donate things
Sure.
than cash.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And we're going to try to do some special events too. We haven't done a whole lot of those. So if you're looking for those, we're going to do like a wine tasting type of thing. Some of the area wineries. The big one I'm working on, if you know anybody that's interested in working on this, I've had this idea for about 5 or 6 years, but I haven't found people that are really gung-ho to chair it, so I'm just going to go forward with it anyway. It's a corporate pine derby race. We'll sell cars for maybe $500 a piece, and businesses can make a car and race the car during cruise night, and there may be some opportunities for gifts for some minutes to sell some cars and get some kickback from that as well. So if you have anybody that's interested in doing something like that, I've talked to some other councils that have done it, and it's been a very successful opportunity for them. So anyway, so there'll be some special events you can join us for as well.
Okay. Good conversation. Hot topic. Does anybody have a topic that they'd like to discuss right now? Something that's relevant now, pressing inside their unit they would like to. Does anybody have any ideas for future topics? Something that we can bring a special guest in, specialist. We've had some great presentations in the past based from hot topics, and so it doesn't have to be me. In fact, I would prefer it not be me. So if somebody has any ideas, I would love to know them so we can get the right people in. And if you don't want to be singled out, write them down on your feedback forms, and we'll leave them there. Scott, would you like to talk about the schedule that we've got together?
So Josh was talking about potential hot topics. We sat down and have done some planning ourselves to give you a preview of what's coming ahead. January, the main group talk is going to be a fireside chat with council officers. So Dave Plon, Eric, anybody else. In fact, if you're somebody you want to get here and grill or just ask a question, let us know and we'll invite him to come. It might be Tyson Coble, talk about camp. Cameron, the camp director. We get them. Carol could come talk about training. Mark will be here too. Mark, High Adventure, and now council president. So, and then we're gonna have our start getting breakouts again. We break out the units between Cub and Boy Scouts. That month, we're gonna talk about crossovers for the Boy Scouts and Blue and Gold for the Cub Scouts. In February, we're going to be talking about summer activities. By summer activities, we're not talking camps. We're saying, what things can you do to keep your boys involved throughout the summertime when they're not in school and they're not kind of cloistered in? And then we'll break out and be able to share ideas from the Scout side and the Cub Scout side. March, we're going to, if we have the materials, we're going to start talking about specific details about the new Cub program. The differences and what to look forward to. And that'll be important for both the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts to know an overview. So that on the Boy Scout side, you know what the Cubs are doing as they're coming to you. And then the breakouts that month for the Cubs will definitely be very specific information on the new program. But on the Scout side, they probably don't want all those specifics. So a popular topic, cooking, and maybe something along the lines of getting out of the rut. You know, cooking the same old thing. What can you do differently?
That was a hot topic I think people wrote down about it.
April, we're going to have 2 main sessions. There's not going to be any breakouts planned. This might get swapped with March if the materials aren't here on time. One first main topic will be disabilities and inclusive scouting, to try to involve all the boys, and that could be anywhere from physical to developmental to learning. We're going to
try to get a guest speaker in for that portion again.
And then unfortunately, often associated with that is bullying. And so we'll have a session dealing with that and how to deal with behavior issues and that might be going on in your units. Then in May, June, and July, we're going to try to help you with programming and getting ready for the next year. So the focus in May will be program planning. And then in order to do that, you've got to have the budget. So July is going to be about budgeting. And then, that'd be June. And then July will be about, well, we know what budget we need, how we're going to get the money to do that. And so the fundraising, start thinking ahead to popcorn and other activities. So that's kind of the broad overview of our program. Josh and I and with other people will then plan the next year come this summer. So that's kind of what we got ahead. And hot topics, we've always going to have time to do those and let us know. And if there's something really important comes up, this is just a tentative schedule. So let's just give you kind of a look ahead of what we're planning.
And one of the things that Scott and I were right out of the gate when we sat down, we started just writing down ideas and then looking as to where they would fit in best. And we both really want to, that's not a real full agenda, for the simple fact that I think that one of the nice things about the Roundtable group is we kind of flow as to where people want us to go for part of that agenda. But people want to talk about what's now, what kind of issues are we facing. And things come up in our world that will change. So it's hard to make a hard, fast schedule for 12 months and be able to accommodate all of that. So that was one of the things that we did. And then the next thing that we did, some of that stuff looks like it's awful early in the calendar year. Well, it's not if you look at the larger scheme, because of the fact that if you start talking about program planning, we want to give everything we can, get the tools in your people's hands so that when you go to your unit and start preparing for this, you have it. We're not talking about it after it's already been done. So that's why some of that seems like it's a little far out there. But any other questions or comments on that? I'm quite good tonight for the most part. The only thing I had for a commissioner's minute was something that was in that presentation that I really, we get stuck in the nuts and bolts of trying to run a unit, and the whole business portion sometimes of fundraising and program planning and dealing with advancement. And something that just really stuck out in that, and I don't remember the guy's name even in his presentation, was remember, we're changing the boys' lives for the better forever. So that should always be a focus. I've got nothing else. If there's any other questions or comments. My beautiful bride and I made pumpkin bread last night, and I brought a bunch in. There's some brownies with different toppings back there, some nuts, there's coffee. Feel free to dig in and hang out for a while. Thanks for coming. There are some extras of these if people would like them to take.
And I suppose fair warning on the schedule, participation will be encouraged, if not demanded.
Yes. It'll be good. It'll be fun.
Flag ceremonies, invitations.
Oh, your recharge stuff? Where's
Yes, okay. Give me 2 minutes for a couple of minutes.
We closed already.
We already closed.
Oh, well, okay, well, I've got some announcements, so there's food back there, by the way. This is a save the date card for Weeblos Woods. This spring, Cameron Jacobiak, our camp director, is going to be putting that on, so everybody, please make sure you take at least one. If you want some more, take more. More information will be coming. I've got sheets up here. If anybody wants to know who still doesn't have youth protection training, I'll actually take them next door. I also have a list of scouts and adults who have incorrect mailing addresses on. Let's see, our planning meeting is in January 31st. We'll get some more information out. That's from like 9 to 4. And so anyone's welcome to come to that. That's where we're going to be planning everything else for the next year and a half. Fireside chat again, they talked about, I encourage you to come to. That's a time that I don't want to call it a gripe session because that's not what it should be. It should be, hey, what things can we do better? What things we're doing right? What do you want to see done? So that kind of thing. I also have a list of new or kids that wanted to join scouting. So I've got those here too. So if you haven't got your units, if you haven't seen the email I sent, make sure you grab this. At our January planning meeting on January 31st, we're going to be talking about scouting for food. As a part of that, we're going to invite some folks from the area food pantries to come in and talk about what we can do better, how we can improve upon that. I got prizes next door. If you're here to pick up your unit prizes, you have to sign them out before you take them. And then if you have your charter renewal stuff with you, you can turn that in to me. Actually, if you need to see me, fine. Otherwise, there's a box in the other room. You can just put it in. I also have some planning guides for this year for the Paxton troops. So these are the last of them. So if you want some, take them, because here in a few weeks I'll probably recycle them. And then I have a few. These are the last remaining Cub Scout. I'm proud of my Cub Scout bumper stickers. So if you like one, you can take one of those as well. And I also have youth and adult applications here. And I have these. Anybody can, if you need one of these, I have one wolf handbook, 4 bear, and 1 tiger cub. I'm going to recycle them if nobody takes them tonight because they're not going to do us any good when we hurry those out. So if you have somebody who needs one, feel free to take one. So that's all I've got, Josh. So it's time to eat food.
We're still closed.